Gurur Brahma, Gurur Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Gurureva Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapyat Sarvam Trailokyam Sacharacharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidyadravinam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karamavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I started that chant so low. What did I eat? What verse are we on? We're in chapter 9.
Chapter 9, verse 77.
And who would like to chant this evening?
Chapter 9.
Chapter 9, verse 77.
Aptopadesham Vishvasya Shraddhaloravicharayan Chintaye Pratyayiranyay Ananta Nitavrittibihi. On the other hand, a believing man putting his faith in the teachings of his teacher and without practicing inquiry should meditate on the objects prescribed without being distracted by other thoughts.
Yes, so here we're going from what the Raja Yogis would say is going from dharana to dhyana if we are not subtle enough to practice self-inquiry. So we focus our mind on some object of meditation advised by the Guru. And it can be a mantra, it can be the form of the Lord, it can be the breath, it can be the scanning of the body. I think that's the one that's done in the Goenka tradition. These are all places to focus the attention. Now, in even grosser form is when we get involved in ritual to do that. But I always go back to Tripura Rahasyam. So because Parashurama's mind was so gross, Dattatreya gave him formal worship of the goddess, which he engaged in for 12 years before he was subtle enough to approach self-inquiry. So what is it all about? We do not want to let philosophical inconsistency be an impediment to our practice. You may have studied the highest Vedanta texts and they inspire you. But when you meditate, if your mind is like a monkey and all over the place, you might do better to have an object of meditation. Any thoughts on this? Next one.
यावच्चिन्त्य स्वरूपत्वा यावच्चिन्त्य स्वरूपत्य यावच्चिन्त्य स्वरूपत्व अभिमान स्वस्य जायते तावद् विचिन्त्य पश्चाश्च तथैवामृति धारयेत्. He should continue the practice of meditation until he realizes himself to be identical to this object of meditation, and then continue this thought till death.
So you want to identify with the object of meditation until death. Now here, I'm not sure where he's going to go with this yet. Two meanings. So for example, if you're a bhakta in the ISKCON tradition, the only thing you need to know about God is you're not it. God is Krishna, Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when you pray, when you meditate, focus on Krishna. Focus on that. Adoring Krishna, merging yourself in Krishna as best you can until death. It can also mean merging yourself with your object of meditation until the death of the ego. So the personal God is as real as your body, mind, intellect, as real as your ego. When one disappears, they both disappear. Next verse.
Brahmachari bhikshamaano yuta samvarga vidyaya samvarga rupatam chitte dharayitva hyabhikshata. A certain brahmachari used to go for alms keeping in his mind. Certain brahmachari used to go for alms, keeping in his mind his identity with the vital air within him.
So he's going to tell a story. So this particular brahmachari goes out begging, and when he does so, he keeps in mind his identification with the prana. He is the prana. Going on.
Purushasye chaya kartum akartum kartumanyatha shakyopas tirato nityam kuryat pratyayasan santatim. Meditation depends on the will of a man, whether he is to do or not to do, or to do it in a different way. One should therefore always continue the thought current.
Yes. So if you're meditating with a form, always bringing our mind back to that. There's a Western practice that's very similar to this. There's a tiny little book called The Practice of the Presence, written by a fellow named Brother Lawrence. And his entire practice was how would I act, think, behave, work if the master were right here? I'm doing the dishes. How would I feel? How would I do dishes if Jesus were right there? So this was his Ishtadevata. Focused his mind on that all the time, no matter what he was doing. This is the kind of thing that Vidyaranyas are talking about here. Any thoughts on this? I'm going to push back a little bit on Vidyaranya, at least the way I was taught. Swamiji never gave us upasana. It was always rooted in self-inquiry. He never said to visualize anything or try to focus on any object. He would thunder, if it's cognizable as an object, that's not it. Drop it. Who am I? That was always the focus of his instruction. And I tend to think that that's the best. But it's not perhaps for everyone. Anybody have thoughts on this? Next verse.
Vedaധ്യായി ह्यप्रमत्तो धीते स्वप्नेऽधिवासित च पिता तु जपत्येव तथा ध्यातापि वासयेत्. A student diligent in reciting the Vedas reads or recites them, even in his dreams, through the force of habit. Similarly, one who practices meditation continues it even in his dreams.
Yeah. Some do. But if you have a particular practice, let's say that you have the repetition of a mantra, and a teacher says you must do 1,008 repetitions of this mantra every day. So it's deeply rooted in you. And you'll find as you move through the day, the mantra will emerge out of the unconscious. Right? You will find yourself chanting the mantra. Never happened to me. Next one.
विरोधि प्रत्ययं त्यक्त्वा नैरन्तर्येण भावयन् लभते वासनावेशात् स्वप्नादावपि भावनान्. Giving up contrary thoughts. If a man ceaselessly meditates, he meditates even in his dreams because of the deep impression.
Yes. So if you commit yourself to this practice, constantly remembering. And I love what Shankara says, in his section Viveka Chudamani on the qualifications of the fit student. After he goes through all four, then he says, others say that bhakti alone is supreme. Does this mean I have to go stand on street corners and chant Hare Krishna? And then he defines it as the constant attempt to live up to my true nature is also considered bhakti, devotion. For a Vedantin, I think that's fine. Can you remember to keep the mind intensely introverted? Can you remember, I am not the body, not the prana, not the mind, not the intellect, not the karta, the doer. Chidakash, the space of pure awareness. What is this world? It appears like a dream, Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. Personally, I feel these are more useful. But I'm not sure I should argue with Vidyaranya. I just did. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
भुञ्जानोऽपि निजारब्धम् अस्थापि क्षयतो निशम् ध्यातुं शक्तो न सन्देहो विषयव्यसनी यथा. There is no doubt that while experiencing the results of his fructifying karma, a man, because of his strong impression, is able to meditate without intermission, just as a man attached to worldly objects always thinks of them.
Yes. So it is a way to turn the mind away from our obsession with the worldly things to the Lord. That's a value. That's a value. What he's talking about here is what I call the law of the third eye. Whatever you look at, you're going to think about. What you look at repeatedly, you will think about repeatedly. Repeated thought becomes habituated thought. Habituated thought sinks into the unconscious and becomes the law. All through the day, turn your mind back on the source. Who am I? Personally, I think that's the most fruitful. Next one.
परव्यसनिनी नारी व्यग्रापि गृहकर्मणि तदेवास्वाद्यत्यन्तः परसङ्गः रसायनम्. A woman devoted to a paramour, though engaged in household duties, will all the time be dwelling in mind on the pleasures with him.
Yes, obviously only women do that, men don't. So yes, when you have a paramour to whom you're married or not, and if your intimacy is good, it returns to the mind, especially for young people. I don't know, it's funny. I don't know if Indians, this was a custom in India, but in like junior high here in the United States, young girls would get a crush on a boy and they write his name all over their notebook. Johnny, 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 Johnny. Did that happen in India? No, yes.
Maybe.
Certainly was from my childhood. That these young girls would get obsessed with a boy. That's how meditation needs to be. Now, let me give you a subtler form of meditation. Take on the idea that every event that happens to me in the world is guru. What is this event teaching me? If I have to wait in line at the bank, the Lord is teaching me patience. If someone doesn't do what you thought they would, the Lord is teaching me acceptance and compassion. Everything in life becomes useful. What Ram Dass used to call grist for the mill. If if you see the phenomenal world as Guru, I think that's one of the most useful meditations. Everything is about my yoga. Any thoughts on this? Personally, I think that's a lot more useful than trying to imagine the prana all the time moving through the body. Next one.
Parasangam svadayantya apino grihakarma tat kunthi bhavedapi vetar apatrenaiva vartate. While enjoying in mind the pleasure of the company of her lover, her household duties, though not much disturbed, are managed indifferently.
Yes. So she's thinking about her paramour while she's sweeping or doing dishes or whatever. See, I would say do exactly the opposite. When you're washing dishes, do nothing but wash the dish. Make dishwashing your meditation. If you're vacuuming, do nothing but vacuuming. Put your mind where your hands are working. Be present to what is. Don't be off someplace. Next one.
Grihakrityapyasanini yatha samyak karoti tat paravyasanini tadvan nakarotyeva sarvatha. The woman with attachment to a paramour cannot fully do the work as a woman attached to her domestic duties does with enthusiasm.
Yes. So if we are distracted, we don't work optimally, is his point. Again, my suggestion, put your mind where your hands are working. You can do it with enthusiasm, you can do it well, you can do it as a meditation. Here, meditation meaning I'm not letting the diversity of the monkey mind always getting in there, distracting me from what is in the phenomenon. Going on.
Evam dhyanaikanishtopi leshalokika maramet tat tatpavirodhitva lokikam samyagacharet. Similarly, a man who practices meditation one-pointedly indifferently performs his worldly affairs. But a man who has realized the truth fulfills his worldly duties well, as they do not come in conflict with his knowledge.
Yes. So, this is what some schools of Buddhists call mirror wiping. The idea is this. Do you have to keep all thoughts away and keep the mind so steady? You need to be able to do that. But you're not going to lose yourself when the mind is properly engaged in the world. It's like the person who carries a hand mirror, walks around. Why are you holding the mirror? Well, so I remember what my face looks like. Did you look at it in the morning? No. It doesn't fall off if you don't look in the mirror. Likewise, when are you ever not? This is why when people come to me and they say, oh, I had an experience of the self, but I lost it. I don't know what they have. But if you grasp what it is, then you see it's the most present dimension of life. It's you. Change its nature. And you don't disappear if you're making soup or working. Next verse.
Maya Maya Prapancho Maya Maya Prapancho Matma Maya Maya Prapanchoyam Atma Chaitanya Rupadhrit Iti Bodhe Virodhakko Laukikapya Kapya Baharina. This world is illusory, Maya, and the self is by nature pure consciousness. How can such knowledge be opposed to his worldly activities?
So, for the woman or the man of knowledge, that the body, mind, intellect engages in the world or doesn't means nothing. If you go out and it's noon and you have a little shadow, as opposed to 4 in the afternoon where your shadow is long, you don't care. You know you have a shadow, you see it. But it's just an illusory thing. It doesn't affect you in any way. So also the Jivan Mukta lets the body fulfill its prarabdha. Do your duty. Serve the society. Knowing that none of it Brahma Satyam Jagat. Next verse.
Apekshate Nabhrattirna Prapanchasya Vastutam Napyatma Chagyam Kinpesha Sadhananyeva Kankshati. To perform activities, the world need not be thought real, nor self as insentient matter. To do so, the right means only are necessary.
Yes. You don't need to have false knowledge in order to function in the world. Don't worry about it. Act as you will. Fulfill your duty. Whether you're sitting in meditation or very busy in the world, do you disappear? No. Do you change your nature? No. All that happens is a change of mind state, change of activity. But what concern does the Jivan Mukta have for the silly states of the mind? This is freedom. This is freedom. Next one.
Manovak Kayatad Pahya Padartha Sadhana Anitan tattvavinnopamrittati vyavaharosya no kuta. These means are the mind, the speech, body, and external objects. They do not disappear on enlightenment. So why can't he engage himself in worldly affairs?
Yes. Well, I'm going to push back. They disappear and they don't disappear. Just like the mirage waters in the desert. In the state of ignorance, it looks like water and my knowledge is water. When I apprehend that its heat waves off the sand, it still looks like. I have no need for the mirage to not look like water. Likewise, for the Jivan Mukta. We just went through this wonderful section in Viveka Chudamani on Thursdays on the question, is there prarabdha karma for the saint? Very much worth reading. The self has no prarabdha. Only the body has karma. The mark of the man of wisdom is that he knows he's not his body. And from the viewpoint of the person of steady wisdom, he sees the body as a dream-like apparition. How can there be any real cause for an illusory thing? So from their viewpoint, there's not even product for the body. From the person in ignorance, they see the woman or the man of knowledge engaged in activity. They get all confused and caught up. A person of steady wisdom has no relationship with it. Next one.
Upamridnati chittam ched vyataso na tu tattvavid na buddhimar dayan drishto ghatat tattvasya vedita. If he controls and concentrates his mind, he is a meditator and not a knower of truth. To know a path, the mind need not be controlled.
Yes. So this is a very subtle point. The man of wisdom does not go around with high beam eyeballs trying to control his mind. We look at texts like Avadhuta Gita and Ashtavakra Gita. May thunder, give up the meditator, give up meditation. Don't quit trying to achieve something. The one who's trying to achieve something is not real. Now, the Jivan Mukta may be seen to be doing spiritual practices. This does not add to their knowledge. For some, it's simply the highest form of worldly pleasure for them. They enjoy it. I always think of great Mahatma like Swami Tapovana. And he walked all the way to the Sharada temple, which is now in Pakistan. How far would that be from Uttarkashi to Pakistan, to northern Pakistan?
1,000 miles probably.
Yeah, incredibly long. And walked. Long distance.
Yeah.
When he
And
got
mountains.
what?
No less there's mountain.
Oh yes, well he loved the mountains. When he got there, he spent some time with the devotees and the priests, chanting hymns to the goddess, having a grand old time. But it was all Leela. It's all it was. So you may meditate, you may not meditate. It all depends on how deeply rooted in Brahman. If you have yet to have sthita prajna, steady wisdom, then continue your sadhana, continue your abhyasa, your practices. If you know who you are, watch out for the subtle desire, yeah, but I want a wackadoodle experience. And that becomes another attachment. This is all there is. I want more. You can have more. But how deeply the mind revels in Brahman is the result of punya, merit acquired in many lifetimes. For some, their samadhi is quite deep. For others, it's a little on the tenuous side. But the mark of the man of wisdom is he no longer struggles. Any thoughts on this? Now we have to be very careful that if we don't have this atmaramana, this capacity to revel in the self, and we study these kinds of verses that Vidyaranya is saying, that we miss a big part of it. Don't settle for being what we call a lip Vedanta. Yes, do not be attached to samadhi, but you cannot renounce something you have got. And it's just a mind state. It's fun. And so is a sandwich for likes. Jack never had. Oh. All right, next one.
It's 650 miles. That's the difference from Uttarkashi. That's the distance from Uttarkashi to Sharada Peeth.
651 miles?
650 miles, yeah.
Wow. That's quite a trek. And how long it took. But that's very different than the person who says, "Oh, I want to go to the Devi temple in such and such a city because it's so sacred and I want to get her darshan and it's going to be so much better if I do that." And you're not getting jnana. Enjoy hiking. Enjoy temples. Knock yourself out. Next verse.
सकृत् प्रत्ययमात्रेण घटश्चेत् भासते सदा स्वप्रकाशोऽयमात्मा किं घटवत् वञ्च न भासते. Doubt, a thought once known by a modification of intellect, vritti, remains so always. Reply, is not the self-illumined capital self also ever manifest?
So I think the doubt is, once you have a vritti in your mind, are you stuck with it forever?
I think he's trying to say like, or maybe he's saying like once a thought is known, you always know it. And so then the response is, well, once you know, isn't the self always?
Yes, I think that's much better. I think you're right. Yes. Because once you get it, I like to use the metaphors like when you look at the funny papers on Sunday morning. Do they call them funny papers? The comic section. They used to have these little visual puzzles. See if you can find all 10 rabbits in the picture. Oh, there it is. Oh, there it is. Once you see, oh, yes, that's where the rabbits are, then, you can't not see the rabbits. So also, when we're doing our sadhana, to apprehend the self as the constant me, myself. Such is the strange power of Maya. But once you see it, really see it, then you see it's always there. Always there. Next verse.
स्वप्रकाशतया किन्ते तद्बुद्धिस्तत्त्ववेदनम् बुद्धिश्च क्षणनाश्येति चोद्यं तुल्पं घटादिषु. Doubt, does the self-luminous property of the self give you the knowledge of Brahman? The vritti with Brahman as the object is the cognition of truth, but the vritti perishes in a moment. Reply, this objection also applies to the cognition of a pot.
Yes. So if I know what a pot is and I no longer look at the pot, do I forget what a pot is? And the difference is a pot can be removed from my direct apprehension. But yourself always is. Yourself still is, even when you're not thinking about it. You don't have to be constantly having the vritti, I'm the self, I'm the self, I'm the self, I'm the self. Aham brahmasmi, aham brahmasmi. No, it is not dependent. I like the example that Ramana Maharshi says. Just as for an ordinary person, you don't wake up in the morning with the doubt that you're a goat or a cow or a horse or a pig. You know you have a human body. It takes no effort, it takes no repetition. You know it. So also for the jnani. Once you see it, it's constant experience, even when the mind is engaged in Yavahara transactions. Self doesn't go away. Quit thinking about it. You have any thoughts, either of you? Next one.
घटादौ निश्चिते बुद्धि नश्यत्येव यदा घट इष्टो नेतुं तदा शक्य इति चेत् सम्ममात्मनि. Doubt. Once an intellectual conviction of the thought's existence is established, the cognition, vritti of the thought perishes. Afterwards, it can be recognized at will of the cognizer. Reply. The same applies to the cognition of the self.
Yes. So before realization dawns on the mind, I may start off with the deeply rooted conviction myself is my body, or myself is my personality. And then through inquiry, I drop those superimpositions. Then I may have subtle things happening. Again, going back to Tripura Rahasyam, when our dude Hemachuda plunges within to realize the self. First, he sees gold, white light. Then he comes out and he says, is that the self? Plunges within again. There's darkness. He comes out and says, there's no consistency to this. Third time he plunges within. Anybody remember what happens the third time? He falls asleep, yeah. Then the fourth time, of course, this could be years of practice. His mind stops. And there's this strange peace, not caused by anything external. And he recognizes, oh, I'm not white light, darkness, or sleep. I'm the knower of everything. Chidananda Rupa. My nature is bliss consciousness. Now, when the mind returns and we're engaged in the world, that experience of the joyful mind may receive it. Or not. But there's a fundamental peace that comes when we know nothing can touch me. I can't be improved. I can't be diminished. No harm comes to me. Like that. It's completely safe. Next one.
Jim, can we even say existence consciousness bliss is a thing of about the characteristics?
You're right. Remember the words point, they do not define. But the self is. There's no doubt that it is. It's not existence the way an object exists. It's eternal existence. It is sentience itself. It shines.
But you could also say it's beyond even the dualities of existence and non-existence.
Absolutely.
So the word itself doesn't make any sense in some ways.
That's why we say avyupadesha. Trust your direct experience. Again, all the words of scripture only indicate, they all are lakshana. And you can call it nibbana. You can call it your Buddha nature. You can call it Allah. You can call it Brahman. You can call it Shiva. You can call it Satchidananda. You can call it Kutastha. Know yourself is not a mountain. It's avyupadesha. No idea is accurate. That's why the best language is the language of negation. Is that useful?
Thank you.
Trust your direct experience. You can call it TED if you want. I don't give a fuck. Doesn't matter. Has no names, and it's all names. All right, next verse.
Jim, what does it mean when they say once an intellectual conviction of the pot's existence is established, the cognition of the pot perishes? What does that mean?
I'm not sure, but I think it means, what is that over there? Is it a rock? Is it a vase? Oh no, it's a pot. That's the see. And once I get it, oh, that's a pot. That's the gata. That's the pot that I use to do puja.
Oh.
Now I know what it is.
Okay.
So I think that's what it means.
Okay. It's strange because what they're saying, the cognition of the pot perishes. That's a weird thing to say. Once you have intellectual conviction of the existence of the pot, the cognition perishes.
Well, I don't know what he means by cognition.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So that's my interpretation of
Got it.
that when I cognize it, then I go through the mental process. I mean, this is the paradigm that it works best for me. First comes direct apprehension, perception. You know, the example I use, I'm out at the ocean and I look and I see something white. Then the intellect comes in and attempts to cognize it, determine the suchness, the thatness of it. Is a boat? Is it a ship? Is it a buoy? Ah, it's a sailboat. Then mind comes in and attributes quality to it. Oh, it's such a beautiful boy. Oh, it's an Oyster 756. Oh, that's such a moving boat. Oh, yeah. Oh, I'd love to sail on one of those. That's mind coming in. So, you know, it happens so fast.
Yeah.
But I think what he's saying when he says cognition, there's sensory perception, and then I determine what it is. But once I've decided, oh, yeah, that's a pot, then the searching for what it is gone.
Got it.
Now, that may not be true. That's just my sense of what he's driving at. Got it. I don't know what the Sanskrit word is.
I read. It's basically says ghatado nishchite buddhi. When the when in the intellect one decides that it is a part, nashyate eva yada ghata, yada, when the part is destroyed. Not, it's like weird, it's a weird sentence. I couldn't figure it out.
That's what I think it means.
Yeah.
In the beginning, I determine what it is, and then I no longer have to determine what it is once I've figured it out.
Okay.
That's my understanding. All right.
Let's focus on Ted.
But what he's saying here is, in the beginning, I don't know what myself is. I haven't figured it out. Am I the body? I remember I have a friend, and he says, well, he's now 80. He says, I figured out who I am. I'm a gay man, I'm an alcoholic, I have difficulty in relationships, and I have a great love and propensity for music and theater. That's who I am. That's fine. You can think that. But for a Vedantan, no, that's not it.
Is he also maybe driving at the point that, before this work, all objects seem like distinct and like separate and all of that, but then after a while, it's all just the self. So like the sort of wanting to know what it is, that process kind of dies.
He may. That's not my reading, but it's certainly a valid one if it works for you. Remember, the style of all of this stuff is maximum meaning with minimum words. I would never say that your interpretation of a shloka is wrong.
I would ascribe minimum words to Vidyaranya.
Good point. Good point.
He uses a lot of words.
Maximum meaning to a plethora of words. Good point. Good point. And, again, going back to Viveka Chudamani, which I just love. When we go through the third qualification of a fit student, Shama Adi Guna, qualities of Shama, etc. The last one is Samadhana, that tranquility when the mind rests in steady contemplation of the goal. And it's not to be achieved through any oscillation of mind. So what I would like to point out is, as we wrestled with the meaning of the verse, that kind of takes us away from that steady contemplation of the goal.
That's why I was saying let's focus on Ted. Just forgotten. You remember you said Ted is the nickname for Brahman?
Yes.
I like that.
Next verse.
All right. Nishchitya sakridatmanam yadapeksha tadaivatam vaktum mantum tatha dhyatum shaknotyeva hi tattvavit. Once the nature of the self has been conclusively determined, the knower can speak of it, think of it, or meditate on it at will.
Yes. So, again, going back to Shankara will say, without knowledge of the self, study of the scriptures is futile. Get lost in commentary and opinion and stuff like that. With knowledge of the self, study of the scripture is, again, futile. You become Pansha. Now, certain verses have traditional symbolic meaning, like 19 miles and 7 limbs and things like that. But the very essence of the scriptures, if you know who you are, without any preparation, you can unfold a verse, a mantra, or a shloka. From your direct experience. Just like if there's an anatomy class and someone has the doubt, Ganesh, do human beings have 3 heads? Did you have to read an anatomy book to know that?
No.
I saw a picture of a deity with 4 arms. Do people have 4 arms?
No.
How do you know this?
Yoga.
It's your own direct experience. It's constant. It's obvious. So also for the Jivan Mukta, the self is obvious. Always. And you can hear a partial teaching. God is in the sky in heaven, and he's a white man with a long beard. Now you have a long life, as Vidyaranya says. Hypothetically, you could read something that may not be a Vedanta scripture. And you go, aha, that person knows. You can tell from their writing. If you have doubt about your self nature, you've got more tapas to do. It's that simple. All right, next verse.
Upasaka iva dhyayando. Upasaka iva dhyaya laukikam. Vismare vismarade vismare vyadi vismaratye vismaratveva sadhyana vismritirnatu vedanat. Doubt. The knower too, like a meditator, forgets worldly affairs in his contemplation. Reply, let him forget. This forgetfulness is due to his meditation and not because of his knowledge of the self.
Yes. Yes. Whether the mind is merged deep within or engaged in the world or watching television, do you disappear? No. You are always human. Once you've apprehended what your nature is, and you know beyond the shadow of a doubt, the self never changes. Then the activity of the mind, the vyavahara of the body, it's just lila. All right, next one.
Dhyanam vaichikametasya vedanan muktisiddhita jnanadeva tu kaivalyam iti shastresu dindima. Meditation is left to his will, for his release has been achieved through knowledge.
Meditation is what?
Is left to his will.
Yes.
For his release has been achieved through knowledge. From knowledge alone comes release. This the scriptures announce with drum beats.
So again, he may or may not meditate. He may enjoy it. Shankara, in that beautiful little poem, there's an opening verse at the beginning of Atmabodha, Prapasmarami Hriddi. Remember that one? I think it's
I don't remember the words, but
Charanaravindam?
what?
Pradasmarami Hridaye Charanaravindam?
I think that's it.
I don't know what the last word is. Hridaye is it Charanaravindam?
Well, anyway, the whole point is what it says is in the early hours of the morning, I remember the self in my heart. Swamiji translates, I meditate on the self in my heart. Now, obviously, Shankara liked getting up early in the morning. Everything is quiet. Oh, even though I have many things to do, just for a few minutes. Spend time with my beloved. And then when your meditation's up, go about your day. Or not. Next verse.
Tattvavidyadi na dhyaye pravarteta tada bahi pravartatam sukhenayam ko badhosya pravartane. Doubt. If a knower does not meditate, he would be drawn to external affairs. Reply. Let him happily engage himself in them. What is the objection for a knower to be so engaged?
So, in the end, when we start off our sadhana, we be very wary of the world. Even Shankara says, do not mistake a snake for a rope. Don't get attached or engaged with worldly things. We have this distinction between worldly pleasure and the bliss of the self. Well, we lied. Truth is, there's no such thing as worldly pleasure. It does not exist. Desire and object of desire become one. The fool thinks the object has inherent bliss. The jiva mukti says, oh, that stopped my mind. He knows the world is dangerous or bad. It's shunyata. So even though he may enjoy the world, he does not do so in the way the fool does. He sports with it. There's no attachment. Now, you and I have to make sure we don't fool ourselves. Take a verse like this and rationalize our suffering. All right, one more.
Ati prasangam iti ched prasangam tavadiraya prasango vidhishastram ched na tattva natat natat tat natat tavavidam prati natat tavavidam prati. Doubt. This sort of reasoning is wrong, for there the scriptures will be violated. Reply. If so, what is right reasoning, please? Doubt. Right reasoning is to follow the injunctions and prohibitions of the scriptures. Reply. But they do not apply to the enlightened.
So the injunctions of scripture apply only to the jinyasu, seeker after liberation, the mumukshu. There are no moral precepts for the jiva mukta. I like to say he's out of control. He no longer controls. Puts the robot on automatic pilot. Now, there's a caveat to this. Never forget that the dharma of the body is karma. So you may be a jiva mukta. But for example, if you are predatory sexually on your students, it's probably going to come back to bite you and you damage other people. That simply is. Now, will it rob the Jivan Mukta of his knowledge? Oh, he must not be enlightened because he did something I think is immoral. This is why, as the yogi gets older, thank God, more and more they become like a fire that's burned up its fuel. And their behavior, their personality doesn't get in the way of the teaching. It may have done what they were. All right, we'll stop here. What verse are we on for next week?
100.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om.